Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for joining myself, Dr. Tara, and Denise Farquharson for another just quick, I would say brief peek under the tent as it relates to emotional intelligence and career transition. And today our topic deals with empathy and not just empathy in its, I would say that we think about showing empathy to others, but more about empathy in interviewing and career transition, which is quite honestly something that I never made the connection to. And so I think it's really important that we kind of lay the foundation that empathy is one of the great skills that falls under emotional intelligence. There are some great skills that fall under there, and empathy is one of those. And empathy in interviews from my perspective is different than empathy in career transition, and we'll take a deep dive into some of those differences. But it's really important that as an interviewee that you understand the perspective of a potential employer, but it's also just as important for that employer interviewer to understand and to demonstrate empathy during an interview. And as I mentioned, as a former HR leader, honestly, I never thought about the role that empathy or emotional intelligence plays when I was interviewing, and also as an interviewee. And it allows you, if you really take the time to really embrace or try to understand what that connection is, to connect to the people who you're speaking to on a deeper level. And it's really beneficial whether you are interviewing or transitioning in your career. And once I really kind of set in that space, I started to kind of play through uh, the connections that really connect to empathy in the interviewing process and also in career transition that I actually utilized, but I did not associate it with EI and or empathy in either case. And so when you think about empathy in interviews, it's really important to be an active listener. And I would say that that's something that I've learned over the years, particularly in my HR career, 15 plus years. Active listening plays a major part during interviews, and it's really important to show genuine interest, to ensure that the interviewee knows that you are listening to the stories. But the other part of that is also being a thoughtful leader and knowing when to stop or pause and hone in on those nonverbal cues or behaviors that the interviewee may not be communicating, but they are displaying. And so being able to do that, noticing that eye contact, noticing that body language, all of those facial expressions, all of those things are really important as a part of that actively listening process, I would say. And also being able to ask thoughtful questions. And that's on the side of the interviewee. So being able to ask thoughtful questions about the company, about the team, about the role, allows you to demonstrate genuine interest. And these are things that I'm sure most of you are doing, but not from a perspective because you thought that it fell under the EI or that it shows or demonstrates empathy while you're interviewing. So taking the time to truly listen in and ask the right questions allows you to understand the employer's needs and how you may or may not be able to really add value to what they're needing at that time. And the other one I would say is one that I definitely was taught to use early in my HR career, regardless of the side of the table that I was on, is to use the we language. About it, of course, we all have individual achievements, but when you think about sharing your story and using the language of we, it allows the individuals on the other side to really get a peek under the tent on how you collaborate, that you're able to have a partnership or build partnerships, and how you're able to work with others because there is a we component versus an I. And so I'll pause right there just to definitely get your perspective on empathy in interviews in career transition, Denise.
Thank you, Tara. Can I just carry on with that we piece? Because you just made something spark in my mind. And it's all about the fact that, yes, when you're demonstrating as an interviewee, the we aspect of task one or task number two or
Mhm,
task number three that meets the needs of this new company that you're looking to join, it also highlights how empathetic you are and
mhm,
how much you then show empathy towards your team workers, your leaders, and the vision of the company as well. And so please do definitely use the we and embrace all of the highlights around. Yes, you may have directed, you may have led,
mhm,
you may have delivered, but there was some element of teamwork going on, and therefore how you rose to the challenge within that team
mhm,
and or did some of the things with other stakeholders or customers, etc. Definitely weave those into your answer because, again, if they are a company who wants empathy at the height of one of the values for their staff, then that is one to consider for sure and highlight it in the answers to your questions. And then just going back to the interviewer talking about the company, talking about the role, but your
mhm,
active listening also needs to perk up when you are also talking about responding to their questions because they will be telling you their pain. They will be telling you their need. They'll be telling you about the challenge that the company is currently facing, or the department or the function. And by actively listening to them when they're describing that opening piece or putting some context around question number three or question number four, actively listen to what they are saying because they are pointing out to you an area where your skills could well help to meet that need. It may help you pinpoint an example of where you have met that pain point somewhere else. And even if you've got pre planned responses for the questions with example A, B, or C, actually, you might want to dig out a different example. Why? Because you have actively listened, been self aware about how you've shown empathy to what they are saying, and you might end up giving a response that will actually nail the interview for you. And oftentimes, as interviewers, we can always tell either right at the very beginning or halfway through or right at the very end where an interviewee turns it around and gives you those extra nuggets of information that ramps up those scoring points. And your active listening is key during this time for you to be able to score those high points. So those are two aspects that I just wanted to just touch on, the we and actively listening very carefully. But I also wanted to highlight an aspect around if you are co-leading an interview, then also watch out as an interviewee for the co-lead's body language, their
mhm.
cues, their behaviors, their eye glances, how they're writing. What are they writing? Well, you can't always see what they're writing, but how quickly are they writing down? Are they bullet pointing it? Because sometimes you can see that as well. And that will give you either that confidence to keep going, or you might give you that insight because you got to turn your empathy will help you turn on that inner gut intuition as well that actually I need to just maybe transition my response slightly and or pause, check in, am I answering the question as you'd expect me to? And if they respond no, then it gives you that ability in that key period of time to just tweak your response as well. So your empathy shows up in so many different aspects of an interview that it's really crucial to just tune in to your empathy traits and use it really effectively to help you win, to help you succeed. That's why we're describing it in this way.
Yeah, and thank you, Denise. Those are some really great nuggets and really how you expanded on the active listening piece. I really liked because, in addition to being an active listener and being able to hone in on how you can add value, it also helps you as the interviewee to form the stories that you want to share, from your past experiences. If you're really listening and being an active listener as they share what the need is, you're able to really pull on those past experiences and share examples that really show the value that you can add. And then the last piece that I wanted to speak on would be, empathy and career transition, because I think that there's a difference in empathy in the interview and empathy in the transition. And now being on the other side of it, from not doing interviews and or being an interviewee, I realized in that time frame, particularly of being an interviewee, that I didn't give myself enough compassion or grace to understand that career transitions, whether it's by force or choice, can be emotionally challenging, more so when it's by force than by choice. But being able to acknowledge that and to feel what you're going through at that time is really important. And that compassion definitely falls under that empathy bucket when you think about, and correct me if I'm wrong, Denise, when you think about it from an emotional intelligence perspective, but then also going to the support of others. And what I networking is well and good, and we do a lot of it when we're in the arenas or the functions in which we're working. But when we start to transition, for me, I found that more so than none, that I was, not networking for myself. I was just more focused on supporting others who were in that space and being able to offer support to them, empathy, to those professional contacts because of what they were going through, more so than leveraging the networking opportunities that I may have had for myself within that transition. So being able to support others, but then also show up for yourself is really important when you think about empathy in the career transition space.
Mm. And just to add to that and finalize our conversation, Tara, when you actually plan that transition, sometimes what we often do not do, we think about it, but we don't necessarily do it, is we
Mhm.
write down, I'm going to be talking to X number of people, or I'm going to be checking in with my coach, or I'm going to be sending off and revising a resume or sending off a resume to company A, B, or C. But what we often don't plan in is, where am I going to get my personal support? What type of self-care will I do? How much self-awareness will I be, enhance? How
Mhm.
much time will I spend looking at my lessons learned for the interview that I went to yesterday? Those are the types of things that still need to be part of your planning as well, because if you don't, you'll end up just task, 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 not much self-empathy, not much self-compassion and care, and then you get into that wild road and journey of transition. And it doesn't have to be a wild journey. It can be really well planned when you're planning your personal development and care at the same time, of which empathy is definitely one of them.
Well said. Definitely, definitely agree.
Lovely. So thank you everyone for joining us today, and we look forward to connecting with you next week. And please do listen out to any of the other messages that we've shared on our posts. Please follow, subscribe, and comment. Do get in touch with drtaraspeaks.com or Denise at denisesparkelson.com. And we look forward to seeing you again next week for another 10-minute blast of EI and career transition. Thank you. Bye bye.